so I want to talk about this, and again, I might do another video if I feel like you need it. Sometimes I get asked questions about, you know, do you use whole signs? Do you use Placidus? You know, what do you think about, you know, Western versus Vedic astrology, you know, tropical versus sidereal and all that. And, you know, I think that what I want to do is first establish what I use and why, and then tell you that there are some overlaps, you know, let's be honest. There are some overlaps. So firstly, you know, I use Modern Western because that is what I was exposed to growing up. I was exposed to that. I identified more with that. I have looked into, because I have one person who, I have a couple people who've asked me, like, I have a stellium in this house in Vedic, and I have a stellium in this house in Western. Like, what does that mean? What do I do? Which one should I go with? I always tell people, go with what you resonate with. You know, houses are different for a reason. Okay, it's just like your grandmom's house and your house, you know, your brother's house and your house. It's not the same house. So even if you have a similar style as your mom, decorating is not the same house. And so that's what I would guide people with. I will not tell you what to believe or what to think. I will say that with my clients, I say, again, I use Placidus. And if people want me to interpret it via whole signs, I can do that. It's no problem. Sometimes I'll even check someone's chart and whole signs before I do it, just to see if there's any overlaps with those systems, because they're not vastly different. I'll explain in a moment my theory on that. Now, as far as house systems goes, especially with there's so many different ones. There's natural houses, whole sign houses, equal house, regiomontanus, periphery, capanus. I don't know if I'm saying that right. There's Coke, there's Placidus, okay? So most of those house calculations are just offshoots of other ones, and they were popularized at different times in history, right? I do think people who want to be astrologers, you should play around with them. See what works for you. I decided that whole signs works really well for me when I'm giving a tutorial, when I'm explaining something to people who are learning astrology for the first time, when I'm doing general horoscopes, I can use whole signs. If I'm interpreting a chart, I default to Placidus. So to me, it's not I'm not, you know, either or. It's what works for you. I mean, maybe in 5 years, I'll have a different theory on what I use and why. You know, as far as Vedic goes, I like there are a lot of astrologers who do Vedic, and I respect their work. I follow their work. I don't have an issue with, you know, learning different types of techniques. There's a lot of timing techniques there's some things that are in different forms of astrology that aren't in others. And I think that is it's cool to research. I do think people should research things. However, if you want to practice something, you have to make a choice. So I can't say, okay, I'm an astrologer. I'm going to randomly use equal houses today. I'm randomly going to use Placidus today. I'm randomly going to use whole signs today. You can, as an astrologer, say, I've seen people's charts where I'm like, I might want to interpret this more with whole signs. Let me ask them. I might want to interpret this with Placidus. I think when you're doing astrology, you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. That's the biggest thing. You can say, listen, you can say you grew up in America, but you're like, you can say you don't like Western astrology. You prefer Vedic, you know, astrology. That's fine. I think just know why you're doing that. In terms of me, why I prefer Western is my signs make sense. Y'all see, I'm a Virgo. I'm a Virgo. Anyone who knows me, I'm a Virgo Sun, Virgo Rising. I'm a Virgo. I'm not a Leo. I have Leo, Mercury, and Mars, but that's my 12th house. So I am not a Leo. I like Leos, but I'm not a Leo. And I feel like the descriptions when using Vedic astrology, it's very different. And now here's the thing. Here's what I will say. You can look at that other chart and see the themes. No matter what I do, my Mars, my Mercury, and my Sun want to be together. So even when I use whole signs, my Sun goes to the first house, but in Placidus, they're all three together. If I do Vedic, those three are together. They're in a different sign, but they're all together in the 11th house. So 11th, no matter what I do, there's placements in my 11th house. No matter what I do, okay? No matter what I do, I have Jupiter in the 6th house. No matter what I do, I have placements in the 4th house. My moon is in the 4th house no matter what I do. No matter what system I use, my moon is there. So for those of you who are like, I want to learn more about this, which one should I use? I say always start with your own chart and see what makes sense and then play around with it. But if you are trying to become an astrologer, you're eventually going to have to choose, because you have to learn something first before you can start playing around with everything else. Okay, you have training wheels when you're riding a bike for a reason. No one says go ride this bike by yourself. There's a level to it. Just like I would tell people, well, you know, what do you learn first? The signs of the houses. You know, people can do whatever they want to do. I mean, signs make the most sense to me, but some people might say, well, I want to learn the houses first. I say you learn the signs, you learn the energy of the signs first, and then we start applying it to the chart and start placing it and piecing it together. That is what I would say for that. So it's not about this is right, this is wrong. It's about me personally. I like routine. I like a system, and things have to make sense. And so to me, yes, more than one thing can be true at one time. Pisces, you people know that. You Pisces people know that. More than one thing can be true. Sagittarius probably too. But the thing is, you have to pick one that you work with the most to really understand what you're doing. Otherwise, you don't see the overlaps. I couldn't see the overlaps in health signs and Placidus if I went into this saying, I'm not even going to look at this, right? Or I'm not going to study something and do it over and over again, and then I can see where I can fudge it. You get what I'm saying? You have to study something over and over again, then you can apply other things to it. So people who are like, I have a couple clients who are like, they want to be astrologers, they want to be somehow in spirituality, or they want to do something regarding these topics. Again, I say, you know, learn the basics first, and then you will see what you can play around with. What I don't and again, y'all do what you want to do. I don't tell anybody what to do. I just tell you what I'm doing. Okay. And I don't tell you what to do. But one thing that's interesting is that what you want to make sure that you are doing is, like, if I'm looking at my transits for the upcoming year, I could look at two systems. I could look at Western and Vedic. I could do that, but then it's like jumbled. So now everything matters. The thing when you don't make a choice, now every single thing applies. It's like when you go to college, you need to pick a major eventually, right? Eventually you have to pick a major, or else you're just gonna be lost in the sauce. And so people you have people successfully who are like, I am this in this system, I am this in this system. That's cool. I'm not gonna tell you not to do that. I just personally don't do that because I can't personally identify with any of the placements in my Vedic chart except for the planets that are in the same house. You see what I'm saying? And I can look at it as this is a pattern. So it's not, I'm not saying, oh, that type of astrology it's not real. I'm saying that's not the way I approach it, but I think there is value in looking at that chart. And I've heard, you know, sometimes you can look at that. People who are into modern astrology can look through the past life. You can look at your Vedic one past life. That's what I've heard. But what we have to also understand about astrology, there are so many different branches of it. And so you might find people who are like into what you're into, and that's perfectly fine. But in the work that I do, I find it really important to make a decision. I feel like my work is way more crafted. It's way more accurate because I've made a decision about what I use, what I don't use, and what I just know about. I do think you should know a lot about the different forms of astrology. Now, as far as traditional goes versus modern, I don't really think it's there are a lot of traditional astrologers that I really respect their work. I have a bunch of books from Demetra George. She's a traditional astrologer, but she wrote the asteroid book, and she also has the other astrology book that talks about modern and traditional, but she's traditional leaning. Chris Brennan in the astrology podcast, I'm a really big fan of his work because I feel like even though he's a traditional astrologer, I can see aspects of that. I learned a lot about history of astrology through his work. So it's not a separate thing. I think that you have to know a little bit about all. When people ask about, well, sometimes people come to me with like the traditional aspect of things. Like, well, the 12th house is supposed to be like this. Like, why personally, why do I think modern astrology can work for people? Well, traditional is important to know. And there could be some people whose charts, maybe the traditional description of that planet is more accurate for some people than others. As an astrologer, you get to see patterns and things. As an astrologer, you have to pull back and then start to ask yourself, wait, let me look into this. This sounds like this. And what I mean is, personally, I look at it like, well, modern astrology brings modern things to the forefront, right? Neptune is not, you know, when we think of Neptune, was not one of the original planets ruling anything, because the original ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. So think about it. Well, Neptune represents idealism, and idealism has always been in the world, but it represents dreams and chasing your dreams and fantasy. If we put it that way. Well, in earlier centuries, not everybody could chase their dreams. You were born to work. It does work for people, and there's an origin to it, and there's a reason to it. And could you have people who are too modern where they make it so fluffy? Yes. So that's why I said I do listen, and I follow people who are traditional astrologers as well, because I learn from them as well. It's not this cut and dry, like I'm a modern astrologer, so nothing you say matters. No, I like to learn from everybody and take bits and pieces, but then I come up with my own interpretations that work for the type of clients that I work with. And so that is how I would look at that. Is I think that there's like modern approaches to things. The 6th house is originally the house of slavery, of servant. So we don't, you know what I mean? Like in modern times, and especially, you know, it doesn't make sense to say that the 6th house is about slavery, because the WTF, right? So that 6th house now in modern times becomes about responsibility. It becomes about work, the things you have to do. So it's still this thing of labor, but it's not as harsh as, you know, being a certain type of person that has to be relegated to a certain status in life. You see what I'm saying? So modern times bring about modern solutions to things, which is why I prefer modern astrology. And I do find value in the planets Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. And in traditional astrology, and Uranus, yeah, it doesn't, they don't do that. In traditional astrology, you have the luminaries are ruled obviously by the sun and the moon, and Saturn takes Aquarius and Capricorn. Mercury, of course, takes Gemini and Virgo. Venus continues with Taurus and Libra. I'm probably missing somebody, y'all. Gemini, I just said Gemini. And I'm missing something, but y'all know what I mean. But the biggest thing also there would be the other situation with Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces and Sagittarius. Okay? So I like working with those planets. I see them in my own chart, so that is why personally that's what I have to go with. Like, there's another astrologer, his traditional leaning as well, Kuta Bava, I believe. Kuta Bava. He says that he was doing a podcast with one of his astrologer friends. I don't remember her name. Sorry. They were talking about when you use astrology and you only use astrology planets, I mean the traditional planets, you still should be able to get the same meaning out of the reading. I have seen that with Placidus and whole signs. So let me switch, and then I'm about to be done. So I think there are different ways you can approach astrology. I think you might even approach astrology different depending on the person's chart. Let's be honest here. You could definitely have a person whose whole sign chart makes more sense than their Placidus chart, even if you are an astrologer that uses one or the other. Now, what I want to show you is the link between whole signs and Placidus. You should. Now, again, you can't, I wouldn't say you can do this with every other house system. I wouldn't say that you can do this easily with every single situation in astrology. But I do think that whether you use Placidus or whole signs, you're going to still see the themes if you are a trained astrologer. Here's what I mean. Listen, you can analyze a chart with just analysis. But if you are an intuitive, so there are people who are astrologers, but they're not intuitives. There are people who literally just deal with the facts of astrology, and they'll interpret your chart thus. And that's fine. There are people who do both. As an intuitive, I started off using my first, actual way in which I was getting, clients was tarot. It was not astrology, even though astrology has always been something I've been interested in. So I already am intuitive. I have intuitive thoughts. Like many of you, I can sense things of that nature. So when I'm doing someone's chart, I'm not putting the same thing in your chart that I put in his chart. Oh, you're both Mars and Gemini. So what? I'm not telling you the same thing I told that person because it means something different to you. And so not only am I interpreting it differently, if I sense something, if I get an inner feeling about a person's personality or something, and it's just coming to me out of nowhere, then I put that in the chart as well. I sense it. So what I mean is, if you're an intuitive astrologer, it doesn't matter if you use Placidus, whole signs, Vedic, or whatever, you probably should be able anyway to pick up on the major themes of the person's chart because it's going to tell a story. So I'm going to cut to a video. I'm going to show you how we could use whole signs or Placidus and still get the same theme to someone's chart. All right, so we're going to look and talk through how we are going to talk about whole signs and Placidus versus does it matter what to use? Well, personally, I've always said, like, in my own chart where I've started from, it makes more sense for me to use Placidus. As I've said before, there's a very big difference between a sun in the 12th house person and a sun in the 1st house person. There's not, you can't really, change that. And so for me, I had to pick something that was true or that I felt was true in order to make sense of my chart and my transits. Saying, well, I think I'm a 12th and I think I'm a 1st, it didn't make sense for me. Now, there are people who might say, they might resonate more with their whole signs chart. I could interpret people's charts via whole signs if they prefer me to do that. That's not a thing. It's not a problem. But for my own chart, like I said before, it made sense. Now, when it comes to Placidus versus whole signs, what we want to think about is the overlaps. So a trained astrologer should be able to interpret a chart either way. A trained astrologer should be able to see the overlaps. So, so for instance, let me give an example. So, and again, this is not me studying someone's chart for a week or two like I typically do where I have insight. I'm not actually interpreting this person's chart right now. I'm simply trying to help you see that there can be overlaps using Placidus and whole signs. And technically, again, if an astrologer is trained enough, they can do either way and still see the person's themes. Now, we'll see that obviously no matter what house system we use, Sagittarius is on the IC of the 4th house, and so you have to interpret that meaning. Now, what we'll see here is you'll say, okay, well, the North Node being in Sagittarius, this has something to do with optimism. It has something to do with, someone having to live their truth, be their truth, attain the truth, not be as objective and fact-driven, but more finding their true purpose and true principles that they want to live by. That's what we could say when we have a North Node, and especially in the 3rd house. So this person maybe has something to do with information. It has something to do with their, the way they communicate. Maybe this has something to do with their occupation as well. A 3rd house North Node, there is something around you being able to deliver or give some type of information, communication, insight, teaching someone. If Sagittarius is this teacher, 3rd house can be formal education. Perhaps this person's meant to be some type of teacher or motivational speaker or something of the sort. Now, what someone will say, well, okay, well, if you use whole signs, that's going to shift this North Node. Yes, it is. It's going to shift into the 4th house. Right? And so I'm going to play around a little bit and show you what that looks like. So let's say if we shift into the 4th house. So what we see is we still have Taurus in the 9th house cusp. And even though Taurus is a different sign than Cancer, we can look at the fact that, well, if we have Taurus here, that means this person's belief system, 9th house dealing with Sagittarius, right? This person has to somehow be very practical and really stick to their roots and their origins and what they know. That is very similar to having your North Node in the 4th house. So either way we dice this, we can interpret this right here. Now again, what rules Taurus? Venus. Now let's look at the Placidus chart. All right, so in Placidus, Venus is in Cancer. Either way we slice it, this person has to pay attention to Cancer energy, fourth house energy, maybe even dealing with the emotions of other people, right? And we're dealing with the emotions of other people because what do we have going on in the chart? Venus is in Cancer. Now, it's in the 10th house when we deal with it in fourth and Placidus. So again, it's almost like this person likely can be some type of healer, counselor. They're dealing with the emotions of other people, but they're doing it through their ability to communicate. And the reason I say that as well is because Pluto and Scorpio, these people can handle really deep, intense feelings and manage them, but they'll be willing to talk about them. And also, this person would have a Gemini midheaven if we're dealing with it in Placidus. So it's a similar theme. And this person also is a moon in Pisces. And so that already enhances their ability to be empathetic. Now, let's say if I go back to whole signs. Well, whole signs now is going to say, wait, we put Venus in Cancer in the 11th house, but this is what we have to think about. The fact of the matter is that luckily for this person, their midheaven does not change if we use Placidus or whole signs. Some people's does. Now, when you use whole signs, it's going to actually assign the midheaven to one of these houses at the top. And again, I've typically only seen them in the 9th, 10th, or 11th houses. It has to be like one of the houses on the cusp or after. And what this means is that's giving an extra layer to this person's career and reputation. Is it in the 9th house, which is more with your ability to be seen as the wise person, the person who has the experience, the person who is motivating and inspirational and goes on journeys in order to get to their sense of satisfaction and how they present themselves. Or the 10th house, career and goals. This is the good old-fashioned climb your way up. This person, in terms of being a Gemini midheaven, Gemini in the 10th house, is dealing with they have to go to school. This is probably a person who does go to college, right? If we look at this chart, it's a person or they have some type of training that requires them to learn to build on in order to do their profession. And we also see here that, Venus shifts into the 11th house versus the 10th house. But what we have also seen is the fact that when we move the North Node here, we're still getting that kind of Cancer energy. And when we put Cancer in 11th house, the fact of the matter is that the Cancer energy is now more involved with the person's communication and how they outreach to other people. And this is a person who communicates better throughout acknowledging the feelings of other people. So again, it's still adding the same kind of layer over the person's chart. Now, one thing that is pretty huge is like, wait a minute, their sun moves from the 11th house to the 12th house. That is kind of a very different shift there. Now, when we look at this, we have to understand the fact of the matter that no matter what, this person has Leo. We go back to Placidus. This person has Leo on the cusp of the 12th house. If you're a Virgo rising, you have Leo on the cusp of the 12th house, meaning that you have to learn to let yourself shine as an individual. A lot of Virgo risings, it's hard for Virgo risings to take compliments. It's a lot of people say, well, they can't take criticism. They can't take compliments either. I'm a Virgo. Virgo rising's like, there's always this humble nature, especially the 12th house of wanting to divorce yourself with ego. And there's always this kind of compliment of like, oh, well, yes, so-and-so helped me, or it wasn't that big of a deal. And so Leo risings have to learn to accept acknowledgement. If you did something great, claim that. Allow people to give you compliments if you deserve them. Now, with that said, is either way. So then you'll say to me, well, wait a minute. In Placidus, they have their sun in Leo. Yes. But they also have Chiron and Leo in the 12th house. And so, as you can see, this conjunct is pretty weak. I mean, it's 13 degrees away. But Chiron is going to influence that person's sun sign. The expression of their sun is going to be influenced by the fact that Chiron, the wounded healer, means this person has an issue with truly expressing their talents and who they are. And so, though they can find a way to shine in social situations, they might always feel like they have to shine when they're taking care of someone else's needs. Mercury in Cancer, 11th house. So this person probably might not even be as shy as the typical Sun in Leo 12th house person, because Leo is fire energy, doesn't like to be contained too much in the 12th house, right? And so though the Sun in Leo person is never seen as shy, this person's sun in the 11th house might seem accidental. When they do shine, it might seem like something it automatically or by chance shows up. Because look, they do have 5th house ruled by the sun, Leo energy. They have Neptune and Uranus directly conjunct each other, meaning this person has some type of talent, but it's almost like it might be incidental. They don't have the true expression of Leo at all times. And also, this person is a moon in Pisces, so they're more empathetic, they're more into senses, they're more into sensing what they feel, they're more into compassionate type of energy and trying to combine with another person and really understand people in a deep, intense way that helps them understand universally how people feel. That's very Pisces in nature. Okay, let's see if some other patterns that I can find. So let's see here. So another one that we have, okay, so we'll see here. So this person has Saturn and Aquarius in the 6th house. These are just asteroids. So it's not as intense when we look here. But let's think about it. So in the 6th house, if this saying there's both Pisces and Aquarius energy here, this person does not, needs to work in a way in which they feel that they are fulfilling some type of mission. They need to feel that they are doing something that enlightens and heightens the spiritual experience of people. And by spiritual, I don't always mean dealing with a cult. Spirit is just what you feel inside. Spirit is the inspiration, the hope that we had. There's different ways to be spiritual. So Saturn Aquarius here, this person works very hard and they're good at managing group dynamics. They're good at understanding the functionality of groups. Now, again, this is just Vesta and this is just Pallas, which is, but I think having Pallas, this asteroid, I did a video on Pallas, creative intelligence in Pisces, is this person, again, is able to tap into people's true inspiration. And if we only had it in the 7th house, that'd be great for when it comes to interpersonal relationships and relating to people. But if it's in the 6th house, this means this person is actually able to make it functional. It's one thing to feel bad for people. It's one thing to have empathy. But when you're actually able to apply it to how to physically fix it, or how to navigate, the 6th house is about making things functional, efficient. It's about your responsibilities. And so the interesting thing is they would be able to kind of tap into that sensitivity, but in a way in which they're able to actually improve how something is. And so you get a little bit more context here when we put it in the 6th house. But let's say what happens if we go to whole sign. And does that theme still kind of hold up? Well, clearly if we have it in whole signs, what's happening here is we do have some energy that is shifting, of course, right? So when the energy is shifting, one thing we can also do is look at the degrees, okay? So we have a 6th degree, which is linked to Virgo. So either way, when you interpret this chart, you're going to see overlaps. And that's what I'm noticing a lot with whole signs and Placidus. So either way, what we're seeing here is we're going to see that there is some type of overlap here, because the 6th degree is a Virgo degree and the 10th degree is a Capricorn degree. And if we look here, look, if we put it in Placidus, this asteroid is in this house with Saturn. If we use Placidus again, this asteroid here is in the same house with Saturn. But if we look at the degrees, it's going to, so when you interpret or I interpret a chart, I'm going to say Pallas now for degrees, I typically use the major placements, the sun, what's the degree of the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, outer planets, it really depends on the theme of the person's chart and if I feel it's significant. But if we want to go intense and we want to define the degrees of each placement, these have earthly qualities, and these earthly qualities are already shown within the 6th house. So either way I interpret this person's chart, we're going to add the element of what does it mean for Vesta and Pisces to be at the 10th degree. See there? That's what's going to basically be the biggest indicator there. Now if we go here, I already talked about the 10th house. Let me go back to Placidus. All right, and I think I talked about, yes, the Cancer and the Leo, and how either way we do this person's chart, we're going to see the same type of information kind of pop out. Now, what we also see here is, okay, well, we have Leo and we have Virgo here. Virgo, this is the person's, their relationships. And we have Juno, and it's in Virgo. And so there we have some, typically Junos can deal with some type of spiritual karmic level to them. And when it's in Virgo, clearly there's going to be some type of, maybe it's a situation that allows this person to improve and feel like they are spiritually more aware of the world, and they understand their own truth and value. And I don't want to say that anybody needs a relationship or anyone has to have one. What I'm saying is sometimes a person comes to you, and because of your experiences, it helps you understand life better. That's basically what I mean. But let's look here and see if we have anything happening towards. So we do have an opposition between Pallas and this asteroid Juno. Let's see, we have a sextile with Mars. Okay, great. So here's what we have going on here. So you'll say, well, you know, that stays there. What if that stays there? Does that change the person's chart? What about if we put it in whole signs? If we put it in whole signs. Well, now we have it in the same house as Mars. And we already said throughout the other, now the placements, now we have some type of indication here between Mars and this person's identity. And I just already said that if it's in the 12th house, either way, there's going to be some type of shift. There's going to be some type of spiritual awareness or spiritual enlightenment. Now, what we also will see here is, well, wait a minute. Pallas is opposition to Juno, and it's in Pisces, and Pisces is linked to the 12th house. So again, when you are interpreting a chart, again, and I also am a big proponent of, if you can be an astrologer and only analyze. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to have intuition if you just wanted to just interpret the charts. I am an intuitive reader. I'm an intuitive astrologer. I started off with doing tarot readings. So I've been doing tarot since I was 15. But I've been to astrology longer than that because my mom used to have a lot of astrology books. But of course, I wasn't reading charts when I was a kid, right? But what I'm saying is, I've always had intuitive abilities. I've always, you know, had a lot of experience that many people on here might have experienced, you know, clairvoyance, or what's the other one? I forgot the other one, where you claircognizance, like seeing things ahead of time and knowing things ahead of time. Not everything, right? I don't claim to know everything, but I just get feelings and I just get certain types of messages to me. So I'm an intuitive reader, and that's why sometimes I will not say the same thing in someone's chart. You can say, oh, well, my friend is also a sun in Leo, and they're in the 5th house. I'm not going to say the same exact thing to you than I will to them, because I sense certain things about people, and that's why every single interpretation I do is unique. I do not copy and paste anything. The only thing I copy and paste is my template for the houses, okay? I do not copy and paste. Everything is based off my own knowledge, my own research, and then using the information in your chart, and then my own intuition to fill in the gaps, okay? So with that said, I believe in being an intuitive reader because it doesn't matter whether you use whole signs or Placidus. You're going to pick up on the themes of the person's chart. And we know with this person's chart, no matter what way we slice it, we have Cancer in there twice. Okay, we have some Virgo energy going on mostly between the 12th and the 1st house. So we know either way, this person has to work on their confidence and not hiding behind tasks, right? We know that in their relationships, the fact that, you know, even with Juno being in the sign opposite of their moon, there's some type of spiritual, there's an opposition there, but there's some type of spiritual component and some type of lesson that they're going to learn throughout their relationships, because you have to merge oppositions. Right? We know that the 6th house is really important as well, because when we do use Placidus, we have 2 asteroids and then we have Saturn there. We know that when it comes to this person's career, they're also going to have to use communication. And we see that no matter what placement, whatever house we use, system, Pluto there, this person's able to handle information. They're able to turn it into something else. They're able to make use of the information that they receive in order to connect with other people. And with the sun in Leo, this person's a sun in Leo and they're a Virgo rising. So with that Leo energy and that Leo expression, even though they're going to need to show it a little bit more, they're going to need to show it a little bit more. What would happen though is, when Leo is cloaked with another sign, you don't have the type of egotism that you can, you know me, I've said it before, I love Leos. I have 2 Leo placements. You know, I do like Leo energy, but we know we sometimes can have the types of Leos who are very egotistical, who are very much about themselves. But we also have the more generous, fun-loving, more, you know, open and inviting type of Leos as well. But what I'm saying is, either way we look at this person's chart, whether it's the 11th or 12th house, we are still dealing with other people. The 12th house more on the spiritual level, but we're going to hit that spiritual level no matter what, because that person has moon in Pisces, and we have to talk about what that means. Okay? And we're going to hit that either way, because if this person has their sun in the 12th house, well, now we need to talk about what they're hiding behind. What of themselves do they need to express? Whereas if we draw that back and we put the sun back in the 11th house, well, we're now still dealing with this Chiron in Leo. Same thing. And we are still dealing with, well, it's not the same exact meaning, but you get what I'm saying. It also means that this person, the sun is in 11th house, they're shining in groups. They're not shining when it comes to self-expression, right? Either way we interpret this person's chart, and if we do it at an intuitive level, we are going to see the themes emerge no matter what. So here is Nikola Stanjovic's theory, and you can read more about him. There are a few interviews on YouTube where he goes more in depth and more specific with what these degrees could mean. But in the most direct way as possible, here's what we'll see. So let's say we have somebody with a chart. They have the moon in Virgo at the 1st degree. Well, that's a moon in Virgo, but then it gives a little bit of an Aries energy to the person. And so the moon in Virgo person could be a little bit more instinctual with how they express. So even though they might analyze things a lot, interpret and be very introspective emotionally, it might have more of a directiveness to it than someone else, right? And so what you'll see is we just go in order. 1, 2, the second sign of the zodiac, the third sign, the fourth sign, the fifth, and so forth. Then when you get to the middle numbers, you're going to see that all he did was add 12 to it. Okay. And he did a lot of research with this. This wasn't just something he came up with. He's, a world renowned astrologer who has a lot of experience in the industry. So, in the field. So, 2 plus 12, 3 plus 12. As you can see, you just add 12 to the place of the sign, and then you get an understanding of how the degree can relate to the person's sign. Now, not only is Nikola Stanjovic's theory simple and easy to understand. Well, astrology is interpretation, so I'm not saying astrology is simple, but not only is it simple, it makes sense. So when I cross-reference this with my own chart, with other people's charts, again, when I find information, I don't just take it and regurgitate it on, YouTube or Instagram. I like to research and actually play with things a little bit before I put something out and say, this is what I practice. So if you look at it, it's really simple. It's, the first sign of the zodiac is Aries, so number 1. The second sign is Taurus. Gemini is the third. So the first thing you do is just go in order. If you see someone has Mercury in Gemini at the 9th degree, so now we're going to say, okay, when we interpret that, we're going to interpret the Mercury in Gemini, but then the astrologer can then add the energy of Sagittarius in there to understand how it might express furthermore. A degree adds a layer to it. All right. Now, to make it even more, adept at understanding how it works, then it's like you add 12. 1 plus 12 is 13. 2 plus 12 is 14. Okay, you have 14, you add 12, you have 26. And so these degrees become cemented in your mind of being related to certain signs, okay? And that means no matter what placement I'm looking at, if I start to see the number 12, I realize, oh, there's a Pisces element there. My North Node is in Taurus, the 12th degree. So it actually gives me further understanding of what I'm supposed to be doing. Not just, yes, I'm supposed to be learning my own value in this lifetime, making my own way, being resourceful, understanding how to build myself up. But at the same time, the 12th degree is saying, well, you also have an obligation to, in some way, inspire and uplift other people through that 12th degree Pisces, all right, energy. So, and then you'll see that some signs only have, once you get to Virgo, so once you get to the 6th sign of the zodiac, you'll see they only have 2 numbers associated with it. So you can remember 6 and 18 is Virgo, Libra is 7 and 19, and so forth. Now, what is interesting is, again, his theory, if you want to look him up, he has more, like he has a theory where he says people who are world leaders, he noticed that the number 22 showed up a lot. And anyone who was a leader would get assassinated or something like that. So he has a lot more interesting theories as it relates to this. So this is just a way to, this is the degree system I use. I use his system when I'm interpreting charts. It is easy. I think it makes sense. When I cross-reference people's charts, sometimes I'll see something, well, like, wait a minute, this person keeps having the number 13 pop up. And it's an Aries energy to their chart. So even if the person is not an Aries and doesn't have any significant Aries placements, we still can see why in that particular area of their life do they seem to have that gusto, that independence, and so forth. Let me be very clear. There are asteroids. I have videos on some of them. There are minor aspects. There are degrees. There are so many other small nuances, and this is just the top 3 that you can use in a chart. What I do want to be clear on, though, is that you still have to understand the basics of astrology. You still have to truly understand the energy of Saturn. You still have to understand the true energy of the sun. We still have to understand what the moon, what the moon is doing to us, and how we respond to life through our moon sign. We have to understand the planets first. Nothing else will matter if there's no planets, right? It won't matter if you have something at the 4th degree. It won't matter if you have this random asteroid in the 1st house. It won't matter with that minor aspect unless we understand the actual planets. And so I have seen like traditional astrologers especially talk more so about understanding the basics of astrology, which I agree with. So just to end this, asteroids, minor aspects, degrees, they add a little bit more detail to what we already know. We have to understand the core aspects of the planets first, okay? I know it gets exciting if you're new to astrology and you learn it's this world beyond the sun sign, beyond a horoscope, beyond a mean. There's something more depth there. But you have to understand what the planets do, the history of the planets, aspects of the planets. We have to understand our chart first before we dive into all these other specific things, which are important. That is why we can see differences between similar people who have similar charts. But then we start to dive deeper, and there's an asteroid that deals with fame. There's an asteroid that can deal with your ability to achieve, to search for fairness in the world. There are so many different layers to asteroids. There's so many of them. It is exciting, but it is exciting to delve into. I do plan to do more videos on aspects and understanding those a little bit more, aspects and asteroids, to do more to help us understand fully what our chart can mean for us.